When I was in elementary school, I was the type of kid who got disrupts class often on the report card, and I never focused much on my school. My district had this system where they would pair high schoolers with younger kids to help them with school, etc. My mom made me do that after I kept getting in trouble. My tutor was a freshman named Abby, and she would come to our house after school to help me with my homework or something. My brother John was the same age as Abby, so they would talk to each other and ended up dating. She stopped tutoring me officially after like a month, but since she was at our house a lot, I talked to Abby a lot as well, and we were close as well. Fast forward 10 years, Abby and John got married and had a kid together. 5 years later, John tells me that he's getting a divorce because he's met someone new. It sucked because I liked John and Abby together a lot, but whatever. He then tells me that he had an affair with his new girlfriend. Also sucks, and I told him that he shouldn't have hurt Abby like that, but whatever. I also asked Abby how she was doing, and she wasn't doing well, but she told me that she didn't want her to be the reason I have a bad relationship with my brother. However, 2 months before the wedding, Abby calls me and tells me that my brother's girlfriend has been harassing her nonstop. She showed me the text, and his girlfriend was saying some pretty disturbing things about how she's so much better than Abby, taunting Abby for having a shared custody of the kid now, etc. Just making fun of her and bullying her. I told my brother about this, and he said that he would ask his girlfriend about it. A month later, I asked him if he ever brought it up, and he said that he saw nothing wrong with the text, which pissed me off. I confirmed that he saw the same text that I saw. Abby apologized for involving me in the whole thing in the first place and encouraged me to still go to the wedding, where my brother asked me to make a speech. The speech went well until I made a joke. The gist of the joke was me turning to his new wife and telling her that if she's learned anything from this, she should know that my brother will never let his wife stop him from finding the love of his life. This got my brother and his wife really mad, and they kicked me out shortly after, and my brother has been calling and texting me nonstop yelling at me. Am I the asshole for making a joke about my brother's affair at his wedding? My wife and I hired a babysitter, Adeline, 18, for our kids 8 months, 2, 4, 5, and 7 a few months ago. Adeline is great with the kids, and she's the only babysitter that can handle so many young kids. However, a couple problems are that she's consistently late. It's usually no more than 5 minutes, but she has been 10 and even 15 minutes late. Another thing is, after she gets everyone in bed, she spends the rest of the night on her phone or laptop. She never cleans up in the playroom because she claims it's always messy and she doesn't know where anything goes and will only clean up what she did with the kids. For example, Adeline did an art project with my 3 older kids and cleaned the counters and the floor after the art project, but she didn't pick up the toys that were in the living room or do the dishes. Another problem is that her outfits can be a little inappropriate for the kids so young. Crop tops, shorts, skirts, dresses that are a little too short or low cut. I've asked my wife to talk to her about it. I felt that it would be more comfortable coming from another woman, but she refused, even though she admitted that she would like Adeline to wear slightly less revealing clothes. My parents are in town and they wanted to take the kids on a walk. While on the walk, they saw Adeline running in a sports bra and shorts that barely covered anything. All of my kids had seen it, and we heard about how they had seen Adeline without a shirt for days. My 5-year-old has also been talking about how pretty she is and that he's going to marry her when he's older, which is completely inappropriate. I decided to fire her because of the reasons listed above. When I told my wife, she started screaming at me because she thinks that Adeline is a great babysitter and she's reasonably priced. I told her that Adeline is a bad influence and I don't want her around my kids, but she's refusing to speak to me until I call her back and offer her job back. She even wants me to offer her a raise if she says no. Am I the asshole for firing the babysitter for being a bad influence? I know this is going to sound fake, but my mom is delusional. I'm not fat shaming anyone here, but she's nearly 400 pounds and in severe denial about it. It started when her last boyfriend called her old and fat. Mom's 45 now and tries to dress like a teenager, and she somehow projected her self-image into my younger sister, who is 17. Mom has repeatedly forced her to wear clothes in the sizes that she gets for herself. The clothes are so baggy they practically fall off my poor sister. I decided to help by getting her some secondhand clothes in her sizes. But my mom always took these clothes as being in her size as well and tore them apart trying to put them on. And when confronted, she claimed that there was just something wrong with the clothes, as my daughter and I are the same size after all. I tried to tell her otherwise, but she refused to listen and even threatened to hurt me when I pressed the matter. My sister was beside herself because any new clothes she got, our mom kept destroying trying to wear. It got so bad that she was hiding her clothes in my apartment and swinging by to change before school, then changing back before she got home. It infuriated me that she was having to do that, so I decided that being the nice guy wasn't solving anything. I invited my mom over to my apartment. While there, I called her out on what she was doing. She denied all of it, so I pulled out the digital scale and asked her to use it. Then I asked my sister to stand on it next, and her weight came out to less than half of our mom's. My mom blamed the scale and said it was faulty, but it read her same weight when she stood on it again. Then I pulled out a nice slim-fitting fur-lined winter jacket that I found for my sister. My mom's eyes lit up when she saw it, as I knew it was the sort of style that she likes. I asked my sister to put on the jacket, and it fit her perfectly. Then I asked my mom to do the same. She didn't hesitate to try, but could barely get one of her arms in the jacket and couldn't even get the other into it. She spent a good 10 minutes struggling with it before I told her that enough was enough and that she and my sister are not the same size at all. I took back the jacket and my sister put it back on with ease. I told my mom that she needed major therapy and to stop projecting herself onto my sister. My mom started huffing and puffing and then left my apartment howling and crying. She locked my sister out of their own apartment. I texted her saying that she'd better let my sister back in or I'd be calling the police for child abandonment. She let her in but refused to speak to her. My sister threw out all of the baggy clothes our mom forced her to wear in favor of the clothes I helped her get. Her friends also contributed to some as well. However, day after day our mom has refused to speak to us, only cries and leaves the room when we try to say anything to her. Did I go too far proving my point? Am I the asshole for forcing my mother to see that she and my sister are not the same size? So my older sister has 3 kids, twin 2-year-olds and an 8-month-old. She's very irresponsible, so my mom takes care of her babies most of the time. Me and my sister are not that close, but she's always touching my clothes and makeup, and it's really annoying since I'm 17 and work a job to pay for all my things while she's unemployed and borrows money from my mom and sometimes me. She also dates a lot, and I honestly don't care. That's her business. I don't ask her about her dating life, and she doesn't ask me about mine. I came home last night to my room torn apart, and a lot of my makeup and extensions were just gone. I was so mad. I called her a bunch of times, and finally someone answered. It was some guy, and I told him to give the phone to my sister. He said she's busy and can't talk right now, and what the fuck do I want? I said that I need to talk to her, and he said that he can relay a message. I said to tell her to bring back my things the same way that she took them, and that I'm not babysitting her kids next weekend like she begged me to. He was like, wait, what? But I hung up. 30 minutes later, my mom comes into my room saying that my sister called her crying hysterically that she was kicked out of some guy's car on the road and needed a ride home, and she was blaming me, saying I exposed her. I was so confused until she came home trying to come after me, and I locked my room door. She was screaming that I told her now ex that she has kids, which isn't my business to tell, which got him mad. She said what I did was child endangerment because you shouldn't mention kids to strangers, and that she decides to tell people on her own time. My mom is on her side saying that there was no need to mention kids if my sister didn't feel comfortable, but my dad is saying that she was wrong and overreacting. So am I the asshole for telling my sister's new boyfriend that she has kids? Imagine the man that your parents hired to work on their house ends up being the same one who kidnaps you in the middle of the night. In the fall of 2001, a young girl named Elizabeth and her mother, Lois, came across a clean-shaven panhandler in downtown Salt Lake City. Lois hands the man who goes by Emmanuel $5 and tells him that he can earn more by working on the family's roof. He gladly accepts this offer. Fast forward to one summer night on June 5th, 2002. Elizabeth, who is only 14 at this time, is jolted awake in the early morning hours by a knife pressed to her throat and a voice ordering her out of bed. Her younger sister, Mary Catherine, is also awakened but remains motionless during the kidnapping. Elizabeth instantly recognizes him as Emmanuel, who is really a man named Brian David Mitchell. She's then forced on a grueling hike up the foothills behind her home until they reach a campsite where they're married by Mitchell's wife and accomplice, Wanda Barzee. 2 hours after the kidnapping, Mary Catherine, who was only 9 at the time, finally rushes to her parents' room to inform them what happened. She was terrified and frozen in fear, thinking that the man would come back for her if she moved. Mary Catherine wakes up her parents and says, Elizabeth is gone. You won't find her. A man came and took her, and he had a gun. Elizabeth's parents shot up instantly to check the house before realizing what Mary Catherine said was true and calling the police. While her parents were frantically looking for her, Elizabeth was at a campsite where the abuse started early on. Over the next 9 months, Elizabeth would be assaulted every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, and tortured in other ways like starvation. She recalls being at the bottom and thinking that it couldn't get any worse, but being proven wrong every time she had that thought. She wondered to herself if her family would still even love her or want her if they found out what this man had done to her. In July, Elizabeth is forced to tell Mitchell about her family and mentions her 15-year-old cousin. He becomes interested in making her his next wife and attempts to abduct her the same way that he did with Elizabeth, but is not successful. A couple months later in September, they take Elizabeth to San Diego, moving between campsites and eating at homeless shelters. Elizabeth is forced to wear a veil and no one recognizes her in the public. On October 12th, Mary Catherine thumbs through Guinness Book of World Records coming to the page of a muscular woman. This is when she suddenly remembers a homeless handyman who helped fix the roof the previous year, his voice identical to the one that ordered her sister out of the room on the traumatic night in June. In February 2003, after clashing with authorities over the issue, the Smart family goes public with a sketch of Emmanuel. This is when people start coming forward and claiming to recognize this man. Elizabeth knew that her only chance at freedom was going back to Utah where her family was. She told Mitchell, who was a self-proclaimed pastor with strong religious views, that she felt that God wanted them to return to Utah. After some prayer, Mitchell ultimately agreed with Smart and was determined to hitchhike back to Utah. This is when Elizabeth had a little bit more hope. Crime Fanatic Friday Part 2, The Kidnapping of Elizabeth Smart. As they walked through the streets going to different stores, Elizabeth was screaming inside of her mind to everyone who passed. Look at me, look at my eyes, don't any of you recognize me? But everyone just walked by. Mitchell told them that they were heading back to the campsite, but along the way they came across a party house. There was lots of music, alcohol, and people inside. While inside, Mitchell starts preaching and leaves Elizabeth's side. A man leans into Elizabeth and starts talking to her, but Mitchell quickly is at her side again, anxious to keep her under his control. They make it back to the campsite where Mitchell is intoxicated and passes out. The next morning, he tells Barzee and Elizabeth that the Lord wants them to walk among the people freely and they'll be protected from any danger. Though he concealed her identity with a veil, he failed to conceal his own face. From the sketches that the Smart family released of him that was featured on America's Most Wanted, he was instantly recognized. Upon returning to Utah, at least 2 different couples spotted Smart and her kidnappers. Mitchell had taken them to the public library to do some research on where they were headed in the winter. As soon as they entered, Elizabeth noticed a man staring at her, then getting up and making a phone call. Mitchell and Barzee were looking at maps in California until he decided that San Diego was going to be their new home. That's when Elizabeth looked up to see a man approaching them. He pulled out a badge and told Mitchell that they had received a few calls about the girl in the veil and needed to confirm that this was not a missing girl. Barzee put her hand on Elizabeth's leg, digging her nails into her thigh to keep her quiet. Mitchell told the officer that she's his daughter and he can't remove the veil because it's forbidden in their religion. A little back and forth and the officer ran out of questions and left. She didn't speak up out of fear and everything that was running through her mind. Some time passes and it became clear that Mitchell was afraid of being found out. One night as they're traveling, he tells Elizabeth that he's going to keep her at the campsite forever as it's too dangerous to bring her around the city. As they're walking, a police car approaches them. Then another one joins. The officers get out and start asking Elizabeth for her name and where she's from, but she's terrified and says nothing. Mitchell is answering for her, but the officer realizes that she's afraid and won't say anything. He gently puts his hand on her shoulder and asks her if she's Elizabeth's Elizabeth Smart. He tells her that her family misses her and has been looking for her. They love her and they want her back home. Finally, with this reassurance, she says, "I am Elizabeth." She's joyfully reunited with her family, and Mitchell and Barzy are taken away. Barzy and Mitchell are both indicted on federal charges. In May 2010, Barzy receives a 15-year sentence. That following year, in May 2011, Mitchell is sentenced to life in prison. Elizabeth got married in 2012 and has children of her own now. She's released 2 books about her experience in healing. My husband stays up late at night and he has to wake up early to go to work. So when he gets home at 5, he has to get 2 hours of a nap so we could both make up for the lack of sleep and also be ready to stay up late to play with his console. He values his sleep and has one rule in the house that he enforces strictly, which is not to be interrupted while he's sleeping. He literally put a sign on the bedroom door saying, "Do not wake me up. Under any circumstances, just no, unless someone's hurt or dead though." In this case, he said he still wouldn't be much of help anyway. The kids and I would sometimes wake him up, but for serious reasons. He got mad and started locking the door. I get no access to the room for 2 hours, but that's not the main problem. This past Tuesday, my 3-year-old son had hot oil spill on his hand while his 14-year-old sister was cooking. I heard him scream and saw that the oil was covering his hand and half of his arm. I brought the first aid kit, but he was in so much pain and his skin looked really bad. I rushed to wake my husband up. I kept knocking, but it got no response, so I tried to open it, but it was locked. I spent a while between knocking on the door, he had his phone turned off, and getting dressed after my daughter asked the neighbor to drive us to the hospital. I couldn't waste more time because my son was crying. The neighbor took us to the hospital, and I couldn't help but feel livid the whole time. When we got home, my husband was pacing around asking where we were and why I wasn't answering his texts. I blew up on him after I showed him our son's injury and told him that I had pounded on the door to wake him up, but he said that he had his earbuds in it and couldn't hear a thing. I called him reckless and neglectful for ignoring a family emergency. He said I could say the same thing about myself for leaving our son unsupervised and causing him to get a burn. I stopped arguing and went to remove the bedroom door lock. He started yelling at me saying that I had no right. I refused to respond. I just walked off to calm down. He didn't stop complaining, calling me bossy and saying by removing the lock I've destroyed his peace and quiet and caused him sleep deprivation. He's insisting I put it back, but I refused. I could be wrong for what I've done, but I was frustrated and mad. Am I the asshole for removing the bedroom lock after my husband ignored a family emergency? I'm 26 and my sister Anna, 24, married my friend Lance, 27. He was the cool guy in our friend group, handsome, mysterious, smart, and quiet. I don't know how he ended up with my sister. She's the total opposite, loud, funny, and outgoing. She's beautiful though, really beautiful, and when they got together, everyone saw how good they looked. Anna seemed to be really in love with him like all the time. She used to say how dreamy he was, how good he treated her, and how spoiled she felt. But Lance was always so stern and quiet. She would revolve around him at family gatherings, but he wouldn't engage that much with everyone but me and her. I was surprised when he asked her to marry him. My sister never took the wifey role too serious. She had a non-traditional wedding and Lance went along with it. She made a bunch of rules that he agreed to and then they moved into his house. Anna banned house utensils from the wedding list. She doesn't work, didn't finish her studies, and doesn't plan on having any kids. My sister is pretty much only into her looks, and I didn't think that Lance cared for that before. She's always on Snapchat or Instagram. I thought that after getting married, she would dress more appropriate since she's used to wearing crop tops, blouses, dress, and shirts that showed her cleavage, short skirts, or tight jeans, but she says that Lance likes her just fine. Last week was my dad's birthday and we had a party. My sister and Lance came and she was wearing a pretty short floral dress. Nonetheless, most of the men were looking at her, including my dad's friends. Lance was as stoic as always, and my sister came to my mom and I saying that she didn't know why he was so quiet since he's not like that, but he is like that, so what the fuck. That's when I told her that if she didn't dress like that, then he might take her more seriously. She got sad and sat quietly for the rest of the night, and I didn't think much of that. But a few days ago, Lance texted me saying that he would appreciate it if I didn't comment on his wife's way of dressing again. Am I the asshole for telling my sister that her husband would take her more seriously if she didn't dress like she did? I am a widower. I lost my wife, Anne, 34, just minutes after she gave birth to our first baby, Sammy. She had a difficult pregnancy, so I took indefinite leave 3 months before she was due. Sammy's 4 months old now, and before I went back to work, I told my mother-in-law, Sandra, 56, about my plans and if she can recommend a nanny to take care of my daughter when I work. She offered to do it for free. I told her she's free to come by any time during the day if she feels uncomfortable with a nanny looking after Sammy, but she insisted on doing it herself. So I said yes and gave her a copy of the house keys. She comes 30 minutes before I leave for work, and when I come home, she stays for dinner and leaves after putting Sammy to sleep. Everything was fine for the first couple of weeks until I noticed that Sammy's not feeding as much. Her formula is barely touched. I asked Sandra about it and why Sammy's not feeding well. She said that she's trying to breastfeed my daughter. At first I thought she was joking, then I realized that she wasn't. She said that Sammy needs to latch on for a few minutes every day to activate her milk production. I almost lost it. I told her that she cannot do that and that she needs to stop. She said that she will, but I caught her again when I walked into my daughter's room and she was forcing Sammy to latch. I confronted her and told her that she's no longer my baby's nanny. I didn't ask for the key back as she's still welcome to my home anytime she wants to visit. I asked for a 1-week leave from work to take care of my daughter and find a nanny. I found one, but after 2 days she never returned. I called her and she said that my mother fired her the day before. I asked her to describe the woman and I was living when I realized it was Sandra. She came into my house using her key and fired my nanny. I was about to call her when she showed up and convoluted the story like how I hired an incompetent nanny, etc., etc. I told her to leave, but she refused and told me that she's calling CPS because I'm endangering my child. We argued back and forth before I called the police and she was charged with trespassing. I know my mother-in-law is grieving the loss of her daughter. I am too. But she crossed the line when she disregarded my wishes. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law are calling me ruthless and I am now second-guessing myself. Have I taken it too far by calling the police? Am I the asshole for calling the police on my mother-in-law after she entered my home and fired my babysitter? I'm 16 and I've had a secret journal for a few years now. I've kept it a secret for a while because if I let my mom know about it, she'll try to snoop, which I don't want. 2 weeks ago though, I made a stupid mistake of leaving my journal out when my mom found it. My mom asked me if it's my journal. Now, I couldn't deny it because on the cover of the book it says journal on it. Also, it's a blue notebook, so my mom knew that it was probably mine since I'm the only one in the house who loves blue. Thankfully, my journal has a lock on it so my mom couldn't read it without a key. My mom demanded that I unlock it so that she could read it. I told her no and that my journal is my private life and she had no right to read it. She said that since she's my mom, I keep no secrets from her and once again demanded to unlock it. I again refused and then grabbed it from my mom's hands. She got so mad that she just stormed off without saying a single thing. Since then, she's brought it up multiple times. She also told my whole family about it, which has led to me getting my phone flooded with angry texts and voicemails from my family saying I had no right to deny her my private life. Am I the asshole for not letting my mom read my journal? Storytime about when I messed up at playing Truth or Dare with my boyfriend. Last night, I had my boyfriend and a few of our mutual friends over to my apartment to drink and play games. Well, after a few hours, we were all pretty wasted and playing Truth or Dare. When my boyfriend picked Truth, I couldn't think of a good question, so I asked jokingly which one of my friends he would sleep with. I've always been secure in our relationship, so I wasn't asking because I was suspicious. I was 100% sure he would say none of them or give a joke answer, but no. Without hesitation, he pointed to our friend Stephanie and said, "Probably Stephanie," then looked at our boyfriend Jacob and said, "No disrespect, man, but damn, you're lucky you get to hit that," and looked her up and down. The room went silent. Stephanie had a disgusted look on her face. She crossed her arms to cover her chest and looked like she was about to blow up at him. He picked up on the fact that everyone was shocked by his answer and said, "What?" Asked and answered, "Come on, let's move on." Stephanie got up out of her seat and went outside to have a smoke. Her boyfriend followed after her. I got up too and he started looking panicked saying, "What did I do wrong? You asked me a question and I answered it truthfully. You shouldn't have asked if you didn't want to know the answer." I just said, "You're right, I shouldn't have asked." I went outside and apologized profusely to Stephanie and Jacob for putting them in that position. Stephanie said it's not my fault, but I felt awful. If I had known that he would give a real answer, I never would have asked him that. I went back inside and all of my guests were packing their things and leaving. When they were all gone, my boyfriend said that he wanted to break up because I'm too dramatic. I was emotionally numb in that moment, so I said, "Oh good, I love when the trash takes itself out." He started crying and saying he didn't mean it. I ordered him an Uber and let him stay inside until the Uber got there. I held it together until he was gone and then I finally cried. He kicked himself out of the friend group by leaving the group chat and not talking to us anymore, and I broke up with him because, well, I don't see him the same way anymore.